What are we doing here? It's midnight and we're in Music Row in Nashville. Our 19-year-old son Max died less than a week ago, and now we're on some crazy vacation. Actually, not crazy. We're on our way to see my wife's family in Austin, Texas, which we decided was better than sitting in our house without Max. And Nashville is our first stop. And it's good. It's good we're here. I try to let the life and chaos roll over me. It's good to keep moving. It's good to keep distracted. Anything to get us through the next few weeks. Max's last day was August 4th, 2019. He went with his friends Sydney, Deja, and Courtney to a large amusement park about an hour and a half from our house.
We were just laughing the whole time and goofing off and waiting, and even though we had to wait in long lines.
Even when we were in the lines, it never really felt like we were just waiting. It was like we were making jokes, like we were telling stories. It was really fun. I remember we took some photos in the little photo booth thing and we could barely fit in there. And I was like, Max, maybe we should just ask someone to take a picture of us. And he was like, no, we can all fit. Someone's gonna sit on my lap, someone's on Sydney's lap. It'll be great. And we ended up taking the pictures and I'm very glad we did.
And we stayed later because we just didn't want to stop hanging around. We just wanted to go on the beach and I just had a good time.
There was apparently this silent disco party at the Cedar Point beach that we decided to go to. And we all got our little headphones and everything, and we were all dancing together. And then Max was like, I want to go play in the water.
It feels like a sign to me that me and Deja stayed on the beach doing the silent disco, and him and Sydney went into the waters on their own before we left.
I remember us getting to the car and everyone being like, yes, finally we're back to the car. And I remember thinking to myself, I am about to sleep this entire ride. It's gonna feel great. We've been walking around all day. And so I remember us driving out of Cedar Point, and I think I was so tired. By the time I got to the freeway, I was out. So that was a really good day, I think, and I am also very glad that that was his last day, because I do feel like it was a very good day for him and Sydney.
So Max was driving home on I-90. He was taking Sydney home first. He was near the 25th Street exit. He was almost getting ready to go on his exit. But a allegedly drunk driver drove onto the 25th Street exit, going almost 100 miles an hour.
The wrong-way driver was driving for about 10 minutes on the highway before he encountered Max.
It scared so many people. So many people were flashing their lights and calling the police and begging for help because people were yelling that this guy was going to kill someone.
Okay, they're driving westbound and eastbound lanes? Yeah. Okay, I'm close to exit to West 25th to exit and yeah, he just missed me. Yo, they going like crazy. On 90, going 90 west on the freeway, going about 120 miles an hour, going the wrong way, going 90 west. Almost hit a truck head on. The truck swerved out of the way to avoid him.
While we were driving, we were just, hanging out, listening to music. I was in the passenger seat, Kevin was driving, and at one point I was just sitting there, and luckily I was looking, and we saw a pair of lights that looked a little brighter than usual. After like a half a second to a second, it caught our attention, and we noticed that it was a car driving on our side of the road, and we kind of sat up and looked at it, and we're like stunned at what we're seeing. It got close very, very quickly, and at one point we noticed it was in our lane heading directly for us, and I shouted at Kevin. I was like, Kevin, you need to get over. And Kevin got our van over just out of the way in time to miss the car. The car continued in our lane and just flew right past us, and it even shook the van. It was going so fast.
And then all the bad luck just kind of lined up at the exact second when the person going the wrong way was driving.
Yeah, we almost very, very soon. Oh yeah, it's on. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
Max is coming the other direction in the same lane. He's driving the right speed. All 4 kids in his car. Max, Sydney, Courtney, and Deja are all wearing their seatbelts.
Max was there. He was encountering a curve and a dip in the road, and there was an 18-wheeler truck in front of him. The 18-wheeler truck saw the car coming head-on, again at 100 miles an hour, and got out of the way at the last minute. So Max suddenly sees the car coming towards him and had less than a second to respond.
Max's car went in a 360. The airbags deployed. Sydney died on impact.
Max was really badly injured and having seizures, and the 2 girls in the back seat, Deja and Courtney, were also severely injured.
The Metro Health ambulance, it came upon the wreck very closely after it happened. I believe that's how Courtney and Deja's lives were saved.
We arrived simultaneously on scene with another unit. With me being the senior medic, it's my role to take what we call incident command. It's where we start determining the number of patients, the severity of the patients, the number of additional units that are going to be needed. We made a quick survey of both vehicles. The driver of the one vehicle was obviously deceased. The other vehicle had 4 people. The front passenger, unfortunately, was obviously deceased. There was the driver, Max, who was in very serious condition, and 2 young ladies in the back seat who were also in very serious condition.
Well, I broke 6 of my bones. I broke both of my femurs and my legs.
I had broken all of my limbs, so both my legs and my arm. Some pieces of my spine had broke off. I had, they call it like a pneumothorax, but basically like a deflated lung.
I also was cut open from a seatbelt in my stomach, and not to be too graphic, but all my organs were just out, and then I was internally decapitated.
I guess my skull was showing.
But I also have nerve damage in my neck that causes me not to be able to lift up my left arm.
Our fire guys that particular night immediately started getting the kids freed. As they were doing that, I assigned the various ambulance crews that were there a particular patient to take care of. At the time, Max was the most serious, so I took control of him. he was the first to be freed from the vehicle because they needed to get him out in order to have space to work to free the two young ladies from the back seat area. When we first got Max, he was actively having a seizure. I was able to give him some medication while he was still in the car to help stop the seizures. Got him on to some oxygen, got a collar on his neck to help immobilize him. By that point, our fire guys had him freed. We got him out and onto a backboard and quickly into our unit. And as the fire department got the young ladies freed, they each took their patients and we transported to Metro. When I had Max in the back, we looked for any other injuries. He was continuing to have a seizure, so I got an IV placed. Was able to give him more medication, get his seizure stopped. At that point, his breathing was a little more shallow, which is expected. Went out ahead and placed an airway into him and started assisting his breathing. We notified Metro that we were going to, what we were bringing into them and provided care for him to Metro, got him into the trauma room and turned him over to the trauma team there.
At perhaps about 2 a.m, we heard a knock on the door. It was the police, and they said Max had been in an accident, a head-on collision that was fairly serious, and that they couldn't tell us anything about his condition. My wife works nights, and I called her and told her I was coming to pick her up.
And I saw Scott was calling, and I immediately answered. Surprised he was calling me a little after 2 a.m.
Then I woke up Sam, my other son.
At 2 a.m., my dad wakes me up, and he says, my brother's been in a car crash.
And Sam and I went to get Laura.
And we get gas, and I'm calling the hospital at the same time as we're driving to Metro Health. We get lost. We drive around the roundabout 3 times. We park across the whole entire hospital. These really nice nurses bring us in a locked section and walk us over to the emergency room. We see Courtney's dad, Scott. I see Scott carrying Courtney's clothes and her shoes. He looks at us, we look at him, and we barely say hi. We're taken to another place upstairs, and we're just sitting in this waiting room. Deja's aunt comes in. We talk to her, and we're just waiting.
And the doctor came in, and she said the words, which probably went in slow motion for all 3 of us.
We were called into another private waiting room where the surgeon came out and told us Max didn't make it, and still didn't register on me for a second. I'm like, make what? Just tell me what's wrong. And then I just howled.
And I guess I didn't know what to do besides manically cry. And they go, do you want another room to cry in? And I didn't really care if I was crying in front of anyone or crying alone. But I said, okay.
I can't make a noise. And I listen to you, Scott, and Sam just wail. And I just don't even believe he's gone.
But we just couldn't believe it. And I guess that's just what everybody says. Nobody expects their child to pass away. Everybody says it doesn't seem real. And I completely understand that. And I even think it's some sort of emotional protection that it doesn't seem real. I often feel like I am in a play about Max dying and not him really gone.
And I knew nothing was going to be the same after that.
The surgeon takes me in to see Max. And there's 2 other surgeons there also, and the woman who's the counselor is with us, which I can't remember her name. I think it was Vicky. And all four of us are on, two of us are on each side of Max, and I'm close to his face. And he doesn't look dead, and he smells like the amusement park. And that was the end of Max. I woke up and I went to work that morning on a Monday, and I got a text from one of Max's old friends in a different state, and she said, "Have you heard from Max? He's not answering his phone." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I heard he got in a car accident." I'm like, "Car accident?" And I started calling him, and he didn't answer, and I called again, and he didn't answer, and I'm like, well, that's normal, Max not to answer. So I called Courtney twice, and as soon as she didn't answer the phone, I knew there was something wrong, and I started freaking out. And I didn't have Max's parents' number at the time, but I knew my mom could have, so I called her and I asked her, "Hey, can you give me Max's mom's number?" And she sent it to me. I was like, because I think something happened. He's like, "It's okay, just call her." I called, she didn't answer, and I was like, "Oh, I hope he's okay." And then I got a call back. I was like, "Oh, hello, I'm sorry to blow up your phone." And then next thing you know, I was like, "Is Max okay? I heard something happened to him." And the next thing you know, I hear Max's mom say, he passed away. He was gone. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was just saying like, he died. And I just started screaming. And I was like freaking out. And my boss told me to go in the back. And I just like, "What are you talking about?" And she explained to me what happened. And I don't know, my heart just stopped. Like, I was screaming. I've never screamed over it. I've never felt the way I did ever before. I've never lost anybody before. And I was just like freaking out, and I kept apologizing because I was crying, and I felt bad, and I kept saying sorry because I know she lost a son. And I called my mom, and she was like, "What happened?" I was like, "Max died in a car accident last night." And I was just crying, and I was screaming, and she was like, "Stay there, don't move." I was like, "No, I gotta leave now." And she's like, "No, don't move. You're in panic. You can't drive." Say, okay, I won't. And I got outside, and I was like, "I gotta go." And I was in the parking lot, and I was just standing there. They were like 25 minutes away. So I was just standing there waiting, and I was just like calling people I knew who knew Max. Even I was calling just whoever I knew that used to talk to him, even like my old friends from school, because I don't talk to anybody. The last people I ever talked to that I knew that I was friends with was people in high school. So I called Krupa, I called Alex.
Jasmine called me. I remember I was getting things ready to go, and she called, and she was just like, "Are you like, did you hear?" And I just said, "What?" And she told me, and I could feel everything just stop.
I was in so much shock. I didn't even like think to ask, like how he died, or like just other things you would ask, because it just catches you so off guard.
My mind didn't really process it at first, so my first thought was like, okay, go back up to Cleveland. He's probably still in the hospital in bad condition, but he's still alive.
Yeah, I was very emotionless for a good 20 minutes, and then it hit me when my dad came home, and he was just like, "What's wrong?" And I just burst out into tears. And I remember that night, I cried all night. I could not believe it was real.
I called Jasmine, and she told me that she was at the hospital, and he was pronounced dead. It didn't take up until then to it didn't really hit me right there and then. I told my cousins, we got back in the car, drove back to the apartment. So we get to our apartment, and I go to the bathroom. I run to the bathroom, and I threw up. I hadn't eaten anything up to this point, but I threw up after I started crying, wailing at that point, yeah. And I told him, "Just take my phone. I don't want it," because everybody was texting me, and I was like, I don't need it. I don't need to see it.
My sister called me and told me that I needed to come over, and she had heard from one of Jasmine's friends. I can't remember which one, but she had me come over,
And I heard it in her voice that something was wrong. So I was kind of freaking out because I thought it might have had something to do with my niece or my nephew. And so I pulled over to the side of the freeway and I'm like, you need to tell me what's wrong, like right now. I can't drive with my anxiety this bad. And she told me, and I don't think I believed her at first. So I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And she was like, Molly, Max is gone. I said, no, I just talked to Max last night. She was like, he got in an accident, and she explained everything to me. And I remember my boyfriend had to come drive to where I was at on the freeway to come pick me up because I couldn't drive.
My friend Courtney had called me the morning after it happened, and she was just sobbing and like couldn't even really get it out. She didn't know how to get it out. And I was just like, what is wrong? Like, what happened? And when she told me, I literally was like, you're lying. Like, are you sure? Like, are you positive? Because there's no way. And as soon as it hit me, I just felt really sick. Just that was a really, really terrible moment.
I didn't believe it until I saw on Facebook the post that, you made about Max, and I just broke down in the bathroom, just crying and screaming, and I don't know how I didn't even get kicked out of the ice cream shop that I was in. I just kind of broke down, and that's how I found out. Not the best way to find out, but yeah.
When you have shock, you can't there's no steering wheel for that. There's no, you can't. I'm a person who I'm not controlling, but I like control. So when that happened, it was like I lost control. It was like I didn't know what to do because my brain just goes directly to like, how do I fix the problem? How do I do this? Where do I go from here? And then there's something like this. There's nowhere to go.
I lost, I feel like, my person, like the person who I could always like have to go to if I needed anything, if it was just to talk, just to have a good laugh, have a good cry. I lost that, and that's been really hard.
And it was just crazy, and I was just calling people, and then my sister came, and she took my car and drove me to the hospital. And I got there, and Courtney was in surgery right away, and her parents and her family was there, and they were just talking to me and telling me what happened. Deja was also in surgery, and her parents are like very calm, but like just saying, just giving us their information. And that's pretty much it the last time. And I just went home. I don't know, nothing's been the same since then.
I would say that the hospital stay felt very long, even though it was like a month. I would think it was a month or so. So one day they gave me an art therapist, and so she had me just like drawing stuff and everything. And so the art therapist lady was in there or whatever. And so my mom came in and she was like, I have something to tell you. Now before this, I had continually been asking, oh, where's Max? Where's Sydney? Where's Courtney? And so people had told me about Courtney. They were like, oh, she's in the hospital as well. But also, mind you, my phone was destroyed in the car accident, so I had no clue what was going on. And like when my friends would visit, I'll pull them to the side and be like, hey, what actually happened to Max and Sydney? Like, no one will tell me. And they'll be like, I don't know. And I'm like, there's no way no one here knows what happened to them. So I was definitely, was thinking about it, but I didn't want to go to like the worst conclusion, death. I was thinking, oh, like was someone paralyzed? Was someone really hurt and they can't go back? Like, I don't know what's happening. And so I was with my art therapist for the first time, and I was using watercolor pencils and watercolor. And so my mom came in, and she definitely looked very distraught. And she was like, I have something to tell you. It's very hard, and it's okay if you're really emotional. She told me about Max's death and about Sydney's death, and it definitely felt very unreal. and I drew a picture of like with this like really sad face. And people even told me that without like me explaining like what that picture meant, they would tell me like, oh, it looks like Max.
We had been about to go on a family vacation to Austin, Texas to visit Laura's parents. And that was going to be the first family vacation that Max went with us on for a couple of years. So we decided to still go rather than just sitting in the house and going crazy. We decided to go down there and be with family. There were several family members that lived there. So looking back, it seems amazing that we could even do that. You know, we were in shock still. We were running on adrenaline. And we did a road trip, and everything was just kind of a blur. But it was the right decision, I think, that we were with the family and at least provided a little bit of comfort and a little bit of distraction for a little while. While we were there, some of Max's friends organized a balloon release where they let balloons go in Twinsburg, where he went to high school, and there were a lot of people attending that, and we were sent the video, and it was one of the first of many really kind gestures.
I feel like being there kind of like made everything feel real. Like it was like, okay, this is like really happening. People are, gathering to pay their condolences to him. It was hard. It was nice to see, everybody come together for Max. But it was also like a reality check almost.
The adrenaline lasted until the funeral. We had a purpose and we had to keep going, and that was the last thing that we had to do for Max. At the funeral, it was packed with people, and just one person after another spoke about how Max helped them or saved them or inspired them. And again, really, I knew Max was a good friend to a lot of people and was having lots of adventures with his friends, but I didn't know how deeply he made a difference to so many people. Max was born in Massachusetts. We lived in Northampton, Massachusetts. Safe and green and filled with artists, musicians, museums, shops, and vegetarian restaurants, I often described it as a practical example of my ideals. And I think it probably had an influence on Max, even though we moved away when he was small. I almost missed his birth. His older brother Sam had taken a really long time to be delivered, almost 48 hours, and there was a lot of waiting around. When Laura went into labor with Max, I took her to the hospital and then took Sam to a friend's house to be babysat. On the way back, along the roadside was a stand making homemade milkshakes, and I almost stopped to get one. At the last minute, I thought, no, I'll head straight back just in case, and I'm glad that I did. When I got back to the hospital, Max was born soon afterwards. If I had stopped to get a milkshake, I would have missed Max's birth, and I'm glad that's not the story we have to tell, that I missed his birth because I got a milkshake. He was beautiful and perfect, and I counted all the fingers and toes. We had lost a child earlier before Sam because she didn't develop correctly and was unable to live outside of the womb, so there was apprehension with the births of both of our boys. And actually, Max was born missing his top front adult teeth, as it turns out. We brought him home, put him on the bed, and Sam snuggled up to him, and Max reached out and put his fingers on Sam's face. When strangers came up to admire the newborn baby later, Sam would say, "I'm the big brother," cheerfully relegated to no longer being the baby and thus the center of attention. Sam and Max were constant companions as children. Anytime Sam found something he was excited about, I can still hear him yelling, "Hey, Max!" His first instinct was to show whatever was interesting and exciting to his little brother. In more recent years, they would have their separate groups of friends and they would argue more, most often about Sam wearing Max's clothes, but they still had each other's backs when it came to important things.
But we would honestly take each other's clothes, so it was a little funny there.
As a toddler, Max was heart-rendingly cute with a little raspy voice that made everybody say, "Aw." When he was less than 3 years old, we moved to Virginia. This is a picture of Max in his car seat driving to Virginia. Here's Sam on the same trip, along with one of our cats, who meowed loudly for the whole 8-hour trip. When we were in Virginia looking for a place to live, we explained to Max that we were looking for a house to live in. Max said, "We already have a house, duh," thinking he was the only one that had it together enough to remember that. When he was still quite little, I was reading a book called Fast Food Nation, and he asked me about it, and I told him about factory farming and how animals were treated, and he never ate meat again. Never even seemed tempted. I'm not a full vegetarian myself, so little toddler Max independently showed extraordinary conviction and willpower. Later, because of his influence, his big brother became a vegetarian too. My mother had passed away and my dad was getting older, so we moved to Virginia to be near him. Those few years before he died were actually the time that I think I was closest to my dad, and we did weekly or bi-weekly trips to see him and bring him food, and I think it helped Dad feel less alone. Before my dad passed away with heart failure, he was in hospice care at his home. It was Max that frequently came with me to visit my dad, and he was seemingly unafraid and generous and loving with my dad as he wasted away and looked pretty scary in the process. It was also Max that came to me the most to help sort through my family's possessions once my dad passed away. We kept or gave away some possessions to other family members and then to strangers, but for the most part, it involved getting a big dumpster in the driveway and throwing away a lifetime of possessions, many of them already rendered dysfunctional by age. That was a cautionary lesson, a literal demonstration and reminder that you can't take it with you. All things are impermanent, and most of your treasures become other people's trash. In those early days, we took him to daycare, which was just part-time because I had a fairly flexible schedule as an artist, but he was not happy at all. He'll get used to it, they said, which is conventional wisdom, and of course he'll get used to it, but he never did. I had the impression that they had never given up before, but they gave up with Max. He never stopped crying, never tried to do anything fun, and just kept persisting with his characteristic determination until we all gave up and rearranged our schedules so that Max didn't go to daycare anymore.
Max loved to draw. He would watch me paint and draw also. I taught him how to draw faces and noses and mouths. And I loved watching his own interpretation of drawing faces. He loved to draw girls and their hair ties and their barrettes, and it was adorable. And he often had very elaborate scenes with all his action figures, and they were really important to him.
All of us have ADHD. We are very hyper, absent-minded, and creative as a family. Often at night, we all four would be in the living room working on separate creative projects at the same time. I made a short animated film about our little family, and it was also about the connection between ADHD and creativity, and it played in festivals all over the world and was picked up for distribution by Shorts International in London. It was wonderful to get encouraging emails from people all over the world who felt different or disenfranchised in a way that was similar to us. It felt like our little family had gotten bigger. In Fredericksburg, Virginia, all of the nearby homeowners were in a similar stage of life, and there was a massive gang of young kids of similar ages in our area, and the kids ran around in a big gang all day long.
He loved running around outside. He was a fast runner, and he would get on his bike and he would go everywhere. He made new friends. He would bring over new people that we'd never seen before. And he made fast, good friends. He was very social and very sweet.
When Max is little, I think the best way to describe it is just Tasmanian devil or firecracker. Max is always doing something, always going on a whirlwind, high energy. And he was also so kind and just so inclusive. And he was a really good friend that I had in the neighborhood. No matter what shape, size, gender, anything, you were always welcome. You were always his friend. And that was something, for a lot of my life, I always felt kind of like an outsider looking in. I was always shy, it wasn't until later that I became a social butterfly. So being with Max and just, having a friend that is there for you 100%, supports you 100%, it's kind of hard to find, but it really makes you feel appreciated and valued.
This was one of my favorite times. I loved being a dad. It was a chance for a second childhood. It was like aliens came to visit, and it was our responsibility to show them what was cool or interesting. What's cool about Earth? Nature, movies, swimming, pools and beaches, toys, going for walks. It was a chance to re-experience everything with fresh eyes. During this time, we took several cross-country trips. One of them was 9,000 miles, driving down the East Coast, through the South, across the Southwest to California, up the West Coast to Seattle, and then back through the northern states. It was amazing seeing every kind of climate and ecosystem, mountains and shorelines and Midwestern plains and deserts, natural wonders and amazing man-made abominations like Las Vegas. I think these trips helped to form who Max became also. When we got back from our giant trip after many weeks, our first weekend back, we were wondering what we should do that day, and little Max suggested that we go to a gas station to get junk food. Apparently, that was one of his favorite parts of his trip across America. We had to patiently explain that was more of a means to an end rather than a fun activity in itself. When Max was 9 years old, I took a teaching job in Cleveland at an art college. Max's birthday is at the end of the summer. We had already cleared out the house and moved all our furniture to Ohio, but we decided to go back to Virginia and stay in our empty house one more weekend and celebrate Max's birthday with all his friends. We bought a slip and slide and put it in the backyard, and we had a party with tons of kids in our empty house. Everybody slipped and slided.
Okay, as I remember that birthday, I remember he had a very good time. They were really using that slip and slide.
And we made a little ruined patch in our nicely manicured backyard as we tried to sell our house.
They were having a great time. We had cake and ice cream. Our house was empty because we were getting ready to move to Reminderville, Ohio. We slept on the floor in sleeping bags. We were really happy, and it was really fun.
And then in the morning, we got up and drove away for the last time with all of Max's friends waving goodbye to us. I think we were the weird family as far as some of the neighbors were concerned, but we were a hit with the kids in the neighborhood. We often had interesting, crazy parties for the kids, birthdays, and of course Max isn't here to offer his opinion, but I think he might have thought of that as one of his best.
Well, we did a lot of Boy Scout things together, which was not always his favorite thing. We spent the night in the frigid cold. And when I couldn't handle it anymore in my tent, when the water came up through the bottom of the tent, I got into my car and turned on the heat really hot. And it was early in the morning, and nobody was awake yet. But somehow that woke up Max, and Max was already tapping on my window, ready to get in the car with me and get all warm. And we ate Reese's and drank Diet Coke, and we just laughed, and we weren't supposed to be doing that. But both of us just were so happy, and it was just nice being with him.
Honestly, Laura was more enthusiastic than Max about having him be in Boy Scouts, but he did get a lot of exposure to nature, camping, etc. And when I interviewed his friends for this movie, they often mentioned nature as one of his favorite things.
Nature, taking walks was a big thing that I know he really liked to do.
He loved nature. I think nature and animals make him very happy. He really loved nature and being outdoors.
We spent a lot of our time doing a lot of nature adventuring, hiking, kayaking, and I always remember whenever I would kayak with him, it was like we were on a speedboat because he would kayak so fast. He would get so excited, and we would just I couldn't keep up with him whenever we would be kayaking.
One of my favorite adventures with Max was going to Hawaii. We stayed in Oahu, and we had lots of adventures. Max was kind of at a transitional age, perhaps 10 to 11 years old, and he wasn't yet a teenager and embarrassed to be seen with his parents. One of my best memories with Max involved renting time on a catamaran, a pontoon sailboat that could actually sail incredibly fast. Laura was nervous and sat in the seat with a safety jacket on. Sam stayed back at the hotel doing teenage things, while Max and I rode in the netting near the water. It was Max and I and an old guy with gold jewelry and his young girlfriend together in the netting, and we all had an odd bonding experience as the boat picked up speed and skipped along the water with the spray going into our faces. As Max and I looked at each other, I knew that we both felt really alive in that moment. For several years, Max went with me every week to get groceries. He was very helpful in a sincere way, but it also occurred to him that if he went, he could pick out stuff that he liked, which he did. Out of the four of us, he was perhaps the best at taking care of himself. Going through everything for this movie, I realized that Max has helped me with every large project I've done for the last 2 decades. He was about my height, so when I filmed things like this, he would sit here and I could rearrange the lighting for myself because I knew he was the same height, but he was always really helpful. My wife asked me to be in a group show, and I had done digital illustrations before, but nothing as a fine artwork and nothing completely digital. So I decided to just whip off something for this local group show that my wife asked me to be in. And so I did this thing called Red Max. It's a kind of an abstracted little Max picture. It's not very good, but it did set me on a path that led to everything else that I've done since then. This is a digital painting of Max posing in Santa Fe, New Mexico, mostly abstract again, a little better, I think. This one's an abstract featuring Max's toys. This is a page from Digital Art Revolution, a book I had published by Random House. It's little Max posing for a Photoshop exercise. This is Max, maybe about 2 years old, posing for me on a green screen for the opening credits animation for a movie I did called Escape Velocity, about the connection between ADHD and creativity, and it's mostly about our family. And this is the finished animation. Here he is being hyper in another animation from Escape Velocity. Here he is hugging Alan Kulikow in Figure Ground about the death of my father. Alan was the chief of staff to the president in the TV show West Wing. Here's Max in a funeral scene for the credits of Figure Ground. Here's Max in another exercise for an online class. For another online class lecture, Max played a young 1940s animator in a scene with me. And ironically, the last thing that Max did with me was a little short video for a gallery in Washington, D.C., and it was about the fear of growing old.
It was the summer before 8th grade. I was really confused, like, with myself and, like, everything, and just really confused. And I had liked Max, and I told him. I was like, I texted him, I was like, you know, I think I like you. And he was like, you know, I like you too, but I can't like you in that way because I think I'm gay. And then I was like, yeah, I feel it. I think so too. Me too.
He had told me about his sexuality in high school. He fully opened up and told me he was gay, I think sophomore year, if I'm correct.
Max came out gay maybe early high school. But to be honest, I kind of figured he was gay much, much earlier.
My cousins, they all had worked with Max prior to this. So they were like, there's this cute gay boy in, Twinsburg. If you're ever over there, you should introduce yourself. So I did know that Max was gay, the first time I met him. I was like, okay, that's the guy I've heard about.
We were talking about his friend Izzy, and I thought that he and Izzy were dating because they were always around each other. And he was like, girl, I'm gay. He was like, and I just haven't been telling people, but I'm gay.
When I first met him, he didn't really like me that much. He and we actually spoke about it a lot, like growing up. But we were in the class together, and it was just can I borrow your pencil? But we never really spoke more after that. It was the following year that we actually got close. But he was goofy. I mean, he always is goofy. It's a more like matured goofy, but he is just he's just goofy.
Max went to school locally, as kids do, and I think it was a mixed bag for him. He met a lot of amazing friends in school, but I think he also didn't fit in and had trouble paying attention to classes that he often felt were boring and uninspiring. He switched to an online school, which he insisted would be a better fit for him, but really he didn't focus, apply himself, and even making sure he attended was a struggle, and he did terribly on his online school. Max also suffered from low levels of depression starting in his teenage years, and I think that affected his desire or lack of desire to apply himself to the online school.
He overcame so much, and I saw that growth in him every year, every day, honestly. There would be times where he would be reclusive and he wouldn't really talk as much or be as excited, and he was having a hard day that day. But then the next day, he would come back, swing back, and he's just like, he never let his bad days overshadow his good days. And I will always remember him and his positive energy and his happiness and his cute way of covering his face when smiling because he was insecure about his teeth, even though they were adorable, and he was adorable.
Then the online school went out of business, which caused our city to have to scramble and figure out what to do with all the online students. Max was able to go back to his physical school in an accelerated program to help people catch up, and he graduated on time, so there was a lot of lucky circumstance that contributed to that. As he grew towards adulthood, Max became involved in a difficult relationship with somebody that was possessive and kept him from his friends for a period of time.
This drama with one of his exes, he was so caught up with them, and we just knew that person wasn't good for him, and we just wanted him to make better choice. But we also knew how much that person meant to him, so we wanted to support him, but it was just really frustrating because we wanted him to be better.
During this time, Max made a half-hearted suicide attempt, taking several pills. I took him to the emergency room, and apparently what he had taken wasn't very serious. They gave him this charcoal stuff to drink. It helps to mitigate toxins, and they said it's okay if you throw up and it's okay if you don't. Max threw up. When you make a suicide attempt, apparently you have to be institutionalized and watched for a period of time, no matter the specific circumstances. Max was a few days short of his 18th birthday, so he was still put in a hospital with teens. He did not view it as a therapeutic experience at all. He was impatient to get out, and his attitude was to act like whatever they needed to see and say whatever they needed to hear to let him out. We did visit and did crafts with him and his friends, and I think the experience did help him to deal with depression and life in general, despite his best efforts. One of the last things that Max and I did together was parasail in Virginia Beach. They put us in a harness together on a boat. Our parachute caught the wind, and we floated down together. Max said he used to be afraid of things like that, but now he really wanted to do things that made him afraid and really live. Max went to 49 states with us, but he didn't want to go to Alaska with us, so on our final trip during his lifetime, he stayed home and worked, and as it turned out, secretly had a party at our house. But Sam, Laura, and I went to Alaska in our 50th state. As he neared what turned out to be the end of his life, he really had everything together, and he had grown amazingly. He was taking care of himself in every way. He had gone to Kent State and then taken time off to work, and was just about to go back to Kent State in just a few weeks. He worked at a restaurant and made an adult-sized income. He saved money for the first time. He was eating well, he was exercising at the gym every night, and was in great physical shape. He was even asking me information about his credit rating and how to improve it. None of that focusing on the future ended up making any difference, but he was in a good, centered place and seemed the most happy and content that I'd seen him in a long time.
He wasn't really confident for a long time because it was so hard for him to learn with his ADHD, and I think it made him feel inadequate, which he wasn't inadequate at all. He was so smart and so talented. And so is Sam, his brother. But I feel that even though we tried to nurture in him that he is so smart, I think he quite didn't believe it until the very end. And then he realized he could accomplish anything. I don't exactly know when it clicked in him that he got it, but it was really close to before he passed away. And he just was ready. He was on the high dive of life, ready to dive into that pool, and he was ready to go. And he was happy, and he was ready to make a difference. And he was just strong.
As I mentioned before, he was born missing his top front teeth, and he had constant dental work in preparation for getting permanent implants. He had to wait until he was fully grown to do the final process. He was quite self-conscious about his teeth. Just before he died, he got a retainer with temporary adult teeth. This is the last picture that Laura took of him, and he's showing his teeth, smiling with his temporary teeth.
And he was getting his braces off and his retainers. And he looked so handsome. And I'm so glad I took these last 3 photos of him. And he was so happy. And his hair was standing straight up. I remember her looking at me and laughing and going, "Mom, what's up with my hair?" And he was laughing and he was trying to fix it. And I was like, "It looks good like that." And he started laughing, and we drove home and he was driving.
Max had an unusual amount of empathy and courage. He was gay, he was creative, above all, he was just unique and stood out and apart because there was no one else like him. Those same qualities, so beloved by his friends, could also make him feel ostracized in other circumstances. Because he was different, because he knew what it was like for other people who were different as well, he became a champion for other people who were mistreated or underappreciated. He became a focal point that brought people together who otherwise wouldn't have hung out together. He stood up for things that he thought were right and was very fearless in doing so. There was no calculation, as far as I could see, about his own safety or what people thought of him. He just tried to do what was right. Sometimes, admittedly, that could involve being quite argumentative, which he was also good at. Max seemed to know just the right thing to say that had enough truth in it to make you feel bad or mad. Also, as I mentioned before, Max became very good at taking care of himself. He moved himself out of his room upstairs near the rest of us and moved downstairs to our guest room, which was larger, near the kitchen, and as far away from the rest of us as possible. So he and his friends had sort of a bachelor pad. Incidentally, in his old room upstairs, I converted it to a green screen studio, and this entire movie, all of the interviews, were conducted in his old room.
His personality and his values will shine through in anybody that gets interviewed, I promise. We took a very big loss with losing Max.
His energy, it was just so intoxicating being near him. He'd just always be so happy and so positive. Even when you knew he was struggling, he'd always try to make you smile.
I had a lot of problems with my mental health when I was younger, especially when we first started being friends and when we were in high school together. And I was kind of left out a lot in class, and no one would really pick me to be a partner or anything. And I never asked him to be my partner, but he really just put himself to be there for me and not have me be the odd one out. And I don't know, that really meant a great deal to me, considering everything that had been going on with me. And he always made sure to let me know that he was there for me. Even if I didn't let him in as much as I wish that I would have, he definitely made sure that I knew that. And I could never thank him enough for that, because he did help me a lot. He was there for me.
I didn't have a car in high school, and I was working 2 jobs and still trying to go to school. So for, I would say, probably almost a month, he would either have me spend the night here and drive me to school and then drive me to work afterwards. Or if I made it to school from wherever I was, he would drive me to work and then pick me up and take me wherever I was going for that night.
If I were about to be introducing you to Max, I'd just be like, just be yourself. Like he'll appreciate exactly who you are, you know. He'll find the best qualities in you. He'd always find the best qualities in you, and he'd let you know. He always gives you compliments, and it just makes you feel really good about yourself.
Max was just overall a really good person. Like, he was very caring about absolutely everything and everyone. And my favorite personality trait of his was probably his sense of humor.
I think everybody that did interviews for this movie, while saying that Max was a wonderful person, saying what a difference he made in their lives, also had times where they found Max annoying or that they were mad at him and maybe even estranged for a time.
The most annoying thing that he could do was he always made plans with a lot of people in one day. So he would forget that he made plans with me, or he would be like late all the time, or he'll just not respond. And I would always be like, where are you? And he's like, oh, I'm on my way. Or, oh, dang, I forgot I made plans with someone else. Oh, do you mind if this person comes?
Well, Max was always unreliable. He always forgot if you were gonna hang out with him or you were supposed to do something. He always forgot. And he always forgot about plans with you. So he would try to, but he made up for it because he always would try to mash his friend groups together. So I'd be hanging out with people I've never even hung out with at school, which was pretty, like Deja, or Jasmine even.
He was very indecisive. That, and he would make plans and completely forget about them up until the day of, and would text me about an hour before we were supposed to hang out and say, oh, I'm so sorry, like, I'm out with said person, or I totally forgot, you know, and made other plans, which happened a lot, but, you know, I forgave him every time, so.
He was a good person, like genuinely good. Even though life was so hard on him, he was genuinely good. And even though we've had our fight, he's had our fights with everyone, or not really fights, but disagreements. But he always came back. He always was the first to apologize. He always was the one who was trying to get the friendship back together. He was always trying to make people laugh and make people come together. And I just think everyone loved him. No matter if you were annoyed by him, you just loved him. I've never met someone like Max. Ever in my life. He definitely helped me a lot to get over my shyness and make me become more friends with people, because I really didn't have any before him.
He's given me a community of friends back in high school, back in middle school, that, you know, I wouldn't have had if it weren't for him.
I feel like we all felt the same way about him. We all knew how generous he was, how loving he could be, and how he was like the Gorilla Glue to all of us.
Sometimes I think it was really hard for him. He didn't want to deal with some things, of course, like we all do. And he was just really close to me, and I enjoyed being close to him. I knew Max had my back, and I feel like we were very similar in a lot of ways. I just really liked Max overall. He had good energy, and he was fun to be around.
I see little things that remind me of him almost every day. And sometimes I still go to call him when something happens. And then I realize I can't. And that it's always like the first time when that happens.
I miss just how genuine he was and how he was there for me always, no matter the circumstances. And I miss how, like, no matter what I was going through, he could always help me, like, make me smile. Like, I could be, like, at my wit's ends, absolutely miserable. And if I was with him, he made me feel better no matter what. He knew how to take me out of my deepest, darkest hole and make me me again. And I haven't found anybody who could do that like he did. Even if we were together, you would always tell me, like, you know, we need to go see this person because they're having a bad time, or it was just always, he always put other people first, and I really liked that about him. But no, he was a very caring person, and it was hard not to love him. It was so hard not to love him.
Mm-hmm. Like, I never would have met Jasmine. I never would have met Fabian. I never would have met Courtney, Sabrina, or Caitlin, like their friend group. And he definitely brought a lot of people together.
I think just having someone as funny and easygoing as him, someone who could make me laugh as much as he did. I've never had someone like instantly his first time talking to me, it was like we were friends. So just having someone who was close to me and that we could talk about anything and just making me laugh all the time over just random things, I'm going to miss a lot.
There are some good days. There are some bad days. On the good days, you know, it's like he's in a better place. I'm glad that he doesn't have to suffer through what's going on right now. And, you know, the bad days are just really bad because I always expected he'd be at my wedding. I'd always expected for him to come down to Columbus once and hang out on my campus, and we'd all go to Graders across the street and just have a good time. And it's hard not having someone that you thought would always be there for you and with you.
I think about him every day. It could be just small things. He just pops into my mind whenever.
When I was growing up, I thought, you know, I will always have a best friend that is unconditionally my friend. Throughout my life, I thought, you know, I'll always have this person, I'll have my back. And now I don't feel like I have any unconditional love from anyone besides my parents. But when they perish, it's going to be hard because I'll feel maybe a little more alone than I would have thought.
The worst part of not having Max is missing loving him and sharing his life. Watching him grow up and learn. He shared such amazing, nice things with me. I miss seeing who he was becoming. And then it was cut off.
Kelly is Sydney's mom, and we've gotten to be friends with her. And honestly, she's one of the few people that know what we're going through because she's going through the same thing.
Sydney was very vibrant. She was fearless. She was confident. Sydney would set a goal and nothing would stop her from it. She wanted to go to Europe, and when I came home from my vacation, she told me that she purchased her ticket to go to Europe. I know that she and I talked about me seeing the Northern Lights. She actually went to Iceland and she saw the Northern Lights, and she sent a video of those to me. So that's actually on my bucket list. Sydney was a full-time student. She went to Loyola. She was very, very proud to be a Rambler. She looked forward to graduation and following up with her studies because she wanted to be an anesthesiologist. Her goal was to be the best out there, and I know she would have been. As a child, Sydney was very playful. She had a great imagination. Again, she didn't let much stop her. If she had ideas or something she wanted to do, typically she would end up doing it. Sydney became friends with Max through a friend of hers that she'd gone to school with since like 5th grade. And she just continued her friendship with Max throughout. And to look at Max and Sid together, you would think that they had been friends since they were like 3 years old. They had a very good, solid friendship, and she really appreciated that. And it would excite her to make plans. Max and I are going to the movies, or Max and I are going out to get something to eat, or whatever. Sydney and Max, Max and Sid, Sydney, Max, Max and Sid. So they were very good friends, and I was glad to know that. For me, my grieving process, I really still can't identify all of the pieces and the parts to it. There was a period of disbelief. There still are periods of disbelief. There are periods of anger, and I don't know what else I can say, but it just kind of varies. Some days it's anger, some days it's disbelief. So it just depends. It depends on what I might see that day or hear that day, or something that triggers. It actually still doesn't seem real to me. Sometimes when I'm in my room, if I have the TV on, in my mind, I'm thinking, I know she's in her room. And that's kind of hard to get. It's very difficult going through this every day because I miss my kid. I miss her terribly. And I write letters to her every day, and that helps. It makes me sad that I have to write a letter to her instead of being able to talk to her. Sydney was a great, great young woman, and she aspired to become a lot. And because of this, I feel she was robbed. I feel I was robbed, and your family was robbed as well. And I think the best way to move forward is to continue on in Sid and Max's legacy and the things and the dreams that they wanted to do.
We did actually talk about death, but I actually talked about when I pass away, because I would never think he would first. And I had told him to be a little sad when I died and to be happy after that, because I love him and I would want him to have a happy rest of his life. And he said he wanted that too. And he actually told Deja that. So me and Max had a few conversations about death actually before he died. And it was more or less, we always talked about just random things. So this wasn't anything new. And I remember asking him, we were sitting in his room just one night, and we were talking about death. I don't remember my exact questions I asked him, but I asked him something along the lines of, oh, how would you want your funeral to go? Or how would you feel about death? And he was saying how he just wouldn't want his funeral to be completely black and sad, and because that wouldn't resemble him. And he was saying how he would want colors, and he would want people to remember the good times about him, or remember like all the great things he did. And he wanted someone to play Drake at his funeral. He was just saying how he didn't think that he resembled sadness, and he didn't want his funeral to resemble sadness. And so I really liked that. And he was saying how he definitely would want people, to miss him at least a little bit, but he also was saying how he would want to inspire people to keep moving.
I'm not big on organized religion. I sure hope there's an afterlife. But, I know there's a human tendency to ascribe things meaning where maybe they're random. So I'm trying to just kind of be objective. But, we've all had things that seemed like signs. One day, I mentioned that Laura works nights, and she was driving home from work at 7 a.m, and this was a little while after Max had passed away.
And then I go home. Sam's still awake, probably awake all night. I go, Sam, you want to see my photos of the rainbow? They're really cool. And he's like, no, Mom, that's not a sign. And so I'm like, okay. So then I go take a shower and I get in bed and I go, hey, Scott, you want to see the photos of my rainbow? They're real pretty on the way home from work. He's like, I'm asleep. I'm like, okay. So then I fall asleep and I happen to look at my iPad. It's around 11 and I hear Scott going, oh my God, Sam, look at this rainbow. And I'm thinking, ha ha ha, that's funny. Well, our neighbor across the street, Chad, he took a photo of our house, and that complete rainbow was over our house perfectly. It looked like our house was centered under the rainbow. And then you can start to see this second part of a rainbow. And if you look at our house carefully, Max's room was behind the garage. And it looks like two beams of light are coming out of his room. And as I've said, it was Max and Sydney who passed away at the wreck. So I always feel like they're together.
That seems just pretty amazing and something that had never happened before. And so it's pretty easy to ascribe meaning to that. But I don't know. But I hope he is still somewhere, and somewhere that we'll be able to meet up with him, and that he's still himself. Max said that he hopes there are cats in heaven. So I'm like, he liked stylishness and, Drake music and cats and nature. And, does he still get that? Is there hair gel in heaven, to make his hair look good? Is there Instagram or equivalent? And if not, is he still himself? Is he not interested in that? Or does he miss that? It's hard to picture a heaven that accommodates Max being Max. Sam and Laura and I do try to tell each other we love each other all the time and to be more patient. I try to reach out and help people more and be more patient with people in general, and see if I can make things a little bit better. And I feel like if I can use Max's death as an inspiration to make little positive differences, then that's at least something. But, honestly, it's no substitute for, having my son.
Before Max, I was very, cutthroat if, I didn't get my way. And I was very dramatic, and I was very, there always needed to be something going on. And I feel like after he passed, I think about it now, if I say something hurtful, if I, start something or, I instigate something, it's gonna, not only is it gonna ruin my day, but it's gonna ruin somebody else's day. And if something was to happen to that person, I wouldn't want to end on bad terms, and then have them die or me die and then feel guilt. I guess I've been more forgiving, and I kind of lay low now. I just want to be on good terms with everybody. Forgive. You don't have to forget, but forgive everybody. Just hug it out.
I met Fabian, and me and him become really good friends. I have a new outlook on life that, always live each day to the fullest, because not everyone is guaranteed another day. Even if you're young, you could be doing everything right, but all it takes is someone else's mistake to really change that.
Well, I definitely learned not to take people's presence for granted, and to show up when somebody matters to you, no matter what it's for.
I've always been an artist, but definitely this whole thing has inspired me to truly go for that, start an art business, and to major in art and possibly transfer to somewhere with a better art program. And it just made me realize how truly unexpected so many things in life are. And so what is life if you're not trying to make the best out of it? because that's kind of what Max always was kind of trying to do, was make the best of it. I ended up breaking most of my limbs, but the only limb that didn't break was my drawing hand. And I was like, wow, that's so ironic that like all I literally could do was draw. And so that kind of worked in my favor, or I made it work in my favor.
His friends and his family definitely will never, ever let him be forgotten in any way, shape, or form. He only got to be here for 19 years, but he left a very big impression on the world and the people that were around him.
I worry about Sam and how Max's death will affect him the rest of his life. And yours, Scott. I feel like lost and vacant, and at the same time learning a whole new set of life skills and becoming a different person without Max's physical presence, but hoping and praying his spiritual presence is with me all the time, because I write him and talk to him all the time, and hope that I get to be with him someday again.
I lost my mom and I lost my grandma, but I was very young. So I dealt with that different. I didn't, it didn't hit me as hard as Max did. And I feel like I saw it hit everybody else just as much as it hit me. My dad's still not over it. He's still, when he talks about Max, he almost cries every time. My whole family loved him. It was a huge loss for everybody. I don't really know if there's something else that I want to say. There's a lot I would like to say to him personally, but
After he passed away, talking to all of his friends, I realized how much of an independent life he had without us. And I think that's why it's so important that we talk to Max's friends for this, to see how they see things and how they saw Max's life as a young adult. I mean, when I was 19, the last thing I would want is for my dad to tell my life story, So I'm glad that we were able to bring in other voices. I do know Max was kind of vain, and he probably would like all the attention. Not just the film, of course, but like all of his friends and the funeral with people saying such amazing things. And you're not forgotten, Max.